This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium. Episode 27, First Round Strategy Guides, The Embers of Muatt. Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martins and Hunter Donaldson.
Doopity-doo, I've got another first round strategy guide for you. Oompa loompa.
Yeah, clap right next to the microphone.
What do you get when you gobble down?
This is hilarious.
It's not funny. I really hate it. They do look a little bit like Oompa Loompas, but
the Embers of Muatt do.
Yeah, they do. They just have okay, you know what it is? Actually, they don't look like anything like Oompa Loompas, but for some reason I did get it in my head
that they look like
Oompa Loompas. And then I'll look back at them and be like, wait, where did I get that? And then I imagine like that all their war sun is just...
So are we just coming up with our new Muatt... We have a tendency of having little characters,
you're right.
And so we just decided that Muatt...
Yeah, I'm sorry we're not pitching it to you in like a really funny way, but like I have always, for some reason...
Just decided that they're the Oompa Loompas.
I didn't decide. Like it was like something that happened in my...
You saw it.
I think the first time I saw their race sheet, like a long time... I'm going way back with this idea. It's because they had the orange pieces.
We always use them as orange pieces.
So they were always
little Oompas.
And it's Oompa Loompa orange.
Little carrot boys.
So yeah, I mean if you play...
Little carrot men.
Carrot men, yeah. If you play Embers and you're like... You know,
we just gave you your battle song.
Here's your battle. Oh my God, that's your battle theme. And, you know, those War Sons is just a bunch of Oompa Loompas in there working their magic.
Yeah.
And also, you know, Oompa Loompas are, you know, short and stumpy. And that's sort of
what you're doing.
The play style.
Hunter, we haven't even introduced this podcast. Hi, I'm Matt Martins.
Hi, I thought I was Matt.
I'm Hunter Donaldson.
And I'm Matt Martins.
Ooh, tricky.
First time listeners.
Don't get it.
Have it.
So
let's talk a little bit about the stream game that we had.
Let's talk about the stream game.
We had a stream game that you can watch on YouTube with a really clever, sweet title called SCPT April 7th game.
Yeah.
Play, watch.
Yeah.
Super clever title, Matt.
It's about an hour and a half before the game starts because I started the stream despite the fact that Hunter wasn't there yet, and it took Hunter an hour and a half to get there.
Yeah, guys, I am just a poor server boy by day, and if you want to come down to Zoigle House Brewing Company, Friday through Sunday.
You can make him late to Twilight Imperium games.
Yeah, you can make me late to Twilight Imperium games, and, you know, tip me fat.
Yeah.
Because I'm just there by myself these days.
So, we're going to jump into this Muatt guide in a second, but we want to talk about this game, and more importantly, I want to take you back to a time when we played good races, and the guides that we were working on were for races that were fun to play.
Yeah, have you guys noticed the slowdown?
Yeah.
Like, have you guys noticed, like, if you go back to when we first started doing the first race, it's like boom, 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 boom.
Oh, yeah, there's been a significant slowdown in our ability to do these guides, and I want to say that pretty much ends today. It ends now because we tackled the two hardest ones for us to work on.
Well, you know, I would say the Sardak Nor one took a lot out of me.
Sure, but we had some wiggle room. But this time we had gotten up against it. We hadn't been getting as many games, and we finally Hunter played 3 games of Muatt to get this guide ready. I played 3.5 games of Winu to get where we're definitely doing Winu next week. There's not going to be any sort of like petering out again. It'll be Muatt and then Winu, and that's the big hurdle we've been trying to get over. And from there, we're pretty much able to do the rest of the strategy guides without too much delay.
Yeah, I would say at this point, we're sort of, you know, if it's like a season of a TV show, we're past the halfway point, and now we're like already starting to advertise like the finale.
Yeah,
you know,
we're
not the finale of the show. I just mean of this season of the show,
this season.
Of the first round strategy guides, which have been a huge mistake. You know what I mean? Like, Just us asking ourselves to be like to create a time capsule of our wrong thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. In a year from now, all of these episodes are useless.
But hopefully they'll announce an expansion and we can do it.
We can
all
just talk
over
about that.
again.
Yeah, exactly. What is the new Muatt's first round
the
strategy?
new Muatt. How about let's try and call all these races again? Too early to call them.
So Hunter, let's jump in. What kind of race besides Oompa Loompas? What is the Muatt? The Embers of Muatt.
Well, Matt really likes to use the term glass cannon to describe them, and I'm gonna describe them more as like a glass, like, war sun.
Oh, good. Very good.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use glass cannon, but we will describe them as a glass war sun. Or an egg basket,
Big
I think
old
is
basket.
a big basket of eggs. This would have been a good Easter episode.
Yeah.
We missed that.
Oh, well.
This would have been a really good Easter episode. So they are egg-shaped. Mm-hmm. And
Looking
that's
right at
kind
them.
of with the egg theme. They kind of have an egg. They're like metal eggs.
Yeah.
And they don't... They're... I don't know. They look like if the robot from that movie Metropolis got fat.
Real fat.
Like Jabba the Hutt plus that Metropolis robot.
Ate too much steak.
And I think they have a lot of, like, history stuff with
Story-wise,
the Jolnar.
they were slaves of the Jolnar. They're just proof that the Jolnar are a terrible, terrible faction to play.
They're the mean boys.
Yeah, Jolnar are terrible, and the Embers of Muatt are proof of that. Their disposition is grim, and boy howdy, isn't that...
Oh man, that's really
fitting?
good.
Yeah.
That's on the nose. Right there.
So Hunter, why do we have all our eggs in one basket?
Because your advantage is that you start with War Sun, essentially, and there are, a lot of people like to think of it that there are other advantages that they have, but in my opinion, that's the one. That's the big one.
And honestly, like part of, especially in TI3, their balancing was like, we have to hurt them in every other feasible way we can because we gave them War Suns to start with.
Right.
And in TI3, they wanted to like give all these abilities, but they had to give Muatt a bunch of really weird, seemingly useless abilities because their ability is that they start with War Suns.
Right.
And so you, like, that's it. Like, that is your advantage and that is what you have. So we have to kind of consider them on a different standing than other races. I'm going to read the other abilities, but just keep in mind, again, these are sort of the least important part of your race.
Right. The War Sun part is
everything.
The thing.
So you have Starforge. As an action, spend 1 token from your strategy pool to place either 2 fighters or 1 destroyer from your reinforcements in a system that contains 1 or more of your War Suns. So it's sort of like Soul's ability, but worse. Gashly Physiology. Your ships can move through supernovas. That's not stop in. That's if you've got a 2-movement ship, which your War Sun is not at the start of the game. But if you get some other 2-movement ship, they can go through War Suns. So, okay, cool. That's kind of fun.
It's interesting that you can't, like, that, as Matt just noted, you can't actually use that ability with your War Sun until you fix it.
Yeah.
So their flagship is called the Inferno. Hey, I got that one. I pronounced that one correctly.
You did it right.
It was
Yay.
easy to. It was like a regular
The
word.
Inferno.
The Inferno.
The infirmary.
The Inferno. It's a very standard flagship as far as stats go. Cost 8. Hits 2 on a 5 like so many of them do. Move 1, capacity 3. This is very vanilla, except for that it has an action, which is not vanilla. That's very different. And the action is spend 1 token from your strategy pool to place 1 cruiser in this unit's system.
So it's an extension of your Starforge ability. I'll say this much. I wouldn't call 2 on a 5 like the vanilla. That's definitely as good as flagships get. The difference is you start with War Suns that are 3 on 3.
3 on a 3.
So by comparison, 2 on a 5 is not especially useful.
No.
And it is the same price as 2 Dreadnoughts, and the ability's good, right? I mean that's the best deal for spend 1 strategy pool to get something that you pretty much can get.
It's good, but not to kind of give away where we're about to go here. I don't think that where we're going with this guide today is going to be recommending that like kind of Starforge, like build units in unexpected places and get them out kind of thing, which I do see people online talking about that. I tried that I tried that, and it did not work very well for me, and it was very, very slow and difficult. So that is not really the direction
Let's finish kind of introing these guys, and then we'll talk a little bit about why we went with a strategy we did go with and why we didn't go with kind of many of the other strategies that exist. They also start with plasma scoring, which grants you an additional die on all bombardment and space cannon rolls, which there's not a better race that could start with plasma scoring.
Yeah, it's a very, very good tech.
You now have 4 bombardment rolling on a 3. That's amazing. I mean, from the get-go, you can dislodge anybody. You are supreme uprooter.
It's honestly even, like, playing them so much kind of brought me around to how good plasma scoring is
very,
as a
very
tech.
good.
It's a very, very good tech.
And you start with a War Sun. And you start with 2 fighters, 4 infantry, and 1 space dock. So if we're counting it by 2C, 4I, you've got 1 really big C, and you've got your 4I.
Yeah.
Problem is,
that's it.
One thing doesn't need to transport 4 infantry, so this is where your problem starts to come in. Your faction technology is Magmus Reactor. It's a 2 red requirement. Your ships can move into supernovas, so this is how you unlock the ability to finally just stop and get in a supernova. It's important to note, nobody else will ever be allowed to do that unless Necro gets a hold of this tech. So supernovas become like a safe haven for you. So that's fun. After 1 or more of your units use production in a system that either contains a War Sun or is adjacent to a supernova, gain 1 trade good. I really want to compare this to some other gain trade good abilities. This is the worst one. This is a bad ability because compare this to SAR's faction ability from the get-go. Every time they take a planet, they get a trade good.
Yeah.
So with SAR, you could get like 6 or 7 trade goods around. This ability, absolute maximum, will get you 3 trade goods around. You have 3 space docks.
Right.
You could activate each one of those. From the get-go, you have 1 space dock. So usually it's only going to get you 1 trade good, and then even then, that space dock has to be adjacent to a supernova, or your War Sun has to be in it, which means your War Sun isn't out doing things.
Right, it's playing
purely defensive. So this ability, throughout the entire course of the game, I bet you're lucky to get 3 trade goods out of it.
Yeah, it's very hard to recommend this one. I think it's super situational. I think maybe you could find a reason for the move into supernova to be like
adjacent to a neighbor.
Right, it just depends. But we are not going to recommend it in this guide, and I can't really see anyone ever making like a very general or like broad recommendation for it. If you want to send us a situation where it helped you, I believe it exists.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen it. Their other faction tech is a unit upgrade called Prototype War Sun 2. It is a War Sun. It has the same War Sun ability. Other players' units in the system lose planetary shield. It has sustained damage. It's bombardment 3 on a 3. It costs 10, so it costs less, which is nice. And it moves on a 3, which is crazy.
Very good. Very huge movement.
Still hits 3 on a 3, and then capacity is 6 still.
So the only changes are 2 cheaper and 2 more movement. 1 more movement than a normal War Sun. So you jump over the ability to have a 2 movement.
It's awkward. They never really get they never get the regular War Sun, essentially. Anything else we want to talk about? Home system. We got to do that, right?
So their home system is a 4-1. One planet, not always a huge fan of it, but if you're only going to have 1 planet in your home system, the least they can do is give you 4 resources.
Yes, they gave you the 4, and that's something. That's at least that's better than Arborek, better than Winnu.
Yeah. We'll get into that next week, but yeah, having 4 resources is nice because if you need to get a tech, you can.
Yeah.
Right? That helps.
All right, it's guide time. I want to first of all, I want to be completely transparent with how much I played the Muatt in preparation for this episode and how I did in those games. Just because I want you to know exactly where we're coming from.
Right.
So,
because you might hear our strategy and you might be like, but that didn't work for me at all. And, I don't doubt that it probably didn't work for you because there's a lot of times where Muatt's games just don't work.
Right.
They are one of these races where you're kind of gambling from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And so this is what we found to be the most consistent. This is what Hunter found to be the most consistent. But there are weaknesses still.
And it's still probably not, it's not going to be the best way to go in every single game.
Right.
But I feel like what we're trying to build is maybe a very... just the safest that we can imagine strategy.
Yes.
So I played 3 games as Muatt. I did not win any of them.
Right.
You can tune out now if you're like, okay, done. See you later.
Yep,
Goodbye.
Not worth my time.
First game, I scored 7 points, was either tied for second or third or something. I was just like kind of in the herd.
Yeah.
Second game was the exact same story, 7 points. I did try very different strategies every game. Last game, I was at 8, and I lost due to initiative number to Matt Martins, which is a co-host of this show, Space Cats Peace Turtles.
Barely lost to me, and I barely, like, it was purely initiative order timing thing, and that was all of it.
It was actually in the stream, so if you want to watch that stream, you can actually just see that game that I played. So let's talk about the things that we're kind of not going to do first, and then we can kind of get into it. I'm not too hard on their faction tech. I'm not really into either of them.
Even their upgraded even their upgraded War Sons. A lot of people will say, like, you got to go for that because the 3 movement is huge. And while, yes, the 3 movement is huge, what's the problem with teching all the way up to War Son 2?
It takes a lot of time and through some red tech that you don't really especially need.
You get a lot of useless tech, and you lost your advantage, because I think we would classify Muatt's advantage as an early game advantage.
Yeah, so by the mid to late game, people, like, okay, so War Sons are a really cool unit, right? And they hit hard, and they're effectively like just like a fleet in a unit. I mean, they're very powerful.
Yeah, one War Son can decimate a fleet.
Direct hit is the problem. Yeah. So direct hit is a very reliable action card for someone to have, which is why I'm going to recommend that you always have a sabotage banked for it if you could do that, which I never did. I never had a single sabotage.
That's pure luck to get one. So
that's hard to recommend within the frame of.
But the point to that is just to say, if you do get a sabotage, do not spend it on anything besides someone else's direct hit. You save that for a direct hit and a direct hit alone.
I will also say their flagship is. We're just going to kind of leave that on the table. You know, there are games where you might build it and find it useful. I don't find it especially useful, which kind of transitions into this point. I don't know if you should be spamming the spend command counters for units ability that Embers has.
Right.
I think it's more effective as a stall in the late game, but it's not a great trade. I mean, I think if you have a War Sun out there with no fighter screen because of something that happened, it had to take too many hits, maybe. But it is a desperate gamble, and I overused it in my first game because I tried to make an argument that Embers is like a stall race. They have Isarl type abilities, and I could not keep my command counter situation healthy enough. You have a lot of needs, basically.
Yeah.
But let's get into our normal strategy
What
guide.
do you want to do with the Embers of Muatt?
Let's talk early game map placement. We want, as far as neighbors go, we want 2 equidistant planets, basically.
In the equidistant positions, you want there to be planets, not junk or empty space. You would really prefer it if on both sides you had something that could be taken and held.
Right. I did not get a lot of supernova shenanigans.
No.
I know that some people have. It is one tile. So I mean, that's the whole thing that holds back.
You got pretty low odds of that being by you.
Right. So as far as map placement and figuring with the supernova, I don't know. Maybe have it in your brain.
Yeah.
If you could. I don't know. There's a couple situations we should probably talk about. If the supernova is next to your home system for some reason, that is the best case scenario for Magmus Reactor.
Right.
Obviously.
Right. Every time you build, you will get some money.
Yes. Which is cool. Maybe not worth it, but. No. The other thing is if the supernova is next to your neighbor, that is a path that only you can go through, provided you've done your homework. I mean, the supernova is interesting for Embers, but none of it is a given.
Right.
It's only one tile, and there are homework things you have to do. Like we said earlier, the War Sun cannot move through the supernova naturally. You have to get either gravity drive or you have to upgrade the War Sun.
Right.
As far as tech specialties we're looking for, I think a blue tech specialty would be great. I think a red tech specialty would be great. I'm going to recommend like a couple different tech paths. Like I think I'm going to recommend more tech than you're probably going to get in any given game. I just know there are some like really specific target tech that we want to go for.
And the red tech path is like the qualifier being we aren't initially recommending upgrading your War Sun.
No.
But there may still be games where the route is, okay, actually we should go ahead and go down red tech.
I mean, I think if you have a red tech specialty planet, like I could see you skipping Magid, going for Duranium, and then getting the War Sun tech.
The argument against getting War Sun 2 is when you don't have a red tech specialty point.
Right.
If you have one, that just opened up that door a little bit for you. So, Hunter, what are the best strategy cards for you to take round 1?
I think that Muatt gets a lot more out of Warfare than any other race. And I think I might get some flack for this recommendation, but I'm thinking about it more on a table or meta level. If Embers gets Warfare round 1, they get to move forward with their War Sun and then move again with their War Sun.
Right.
And I think as far as the table's response to that's where the advantage is. Because if you can move your War Sun out of your home system and then to, let's say, an equidistant planet, a planet that you would not normally have a natural claim to, being in your home slice, well, that's probably yours for at least the late game. And it's kind of just naturally yours.
Yeah.
Like, I found that when I played Embers, I was able to build larger pie slices than normal because the War Sun is a threatening presence for pretty much reliably the first 3 to 4 rounds of the game. Like, it just is.
So getting it out there and making it a presence is going to help you more in the long run. And so what else? You couldn't get Warfare, right? You didn't go first. You didn't get Warfare.
Right.
What do you get?
Exactly. Trade is a very good pick for War Sun, or for I do that every time.
I call them War Suns. I just call them the War Sun race.
Yeah, trade is a really good pick for Embers because one of our early game priorities is going to be building our second War Sun.
Yeah.
All of the eggs are in one basket, right? We've already said that. So the best thing that you can do for your strategy is build the second basket, so that if for some reason you do lose your first War Sun, it is not a crushing defeat. And also, remember, they have 4 commodities. So if you get trade out there, you maybe even you take an equidistant planet from your neighbor and you're sort of putting a little bit of pressure on them. You could even just kind of curtail that into, let's be trade partners. Depending on how that goes. That's how you get closer and closer to building that second War Sun, which I think you could do by round 2.
Yeah. The interesting thing about Muatt is you have this big threat, and we're going to be talking about this a lot, but you have this threat, and you should use that threat to become a good trade partner with someone.
Right.
Not in a domineering, do what I say or I'll crush you, because they can just as easily take out that War Sun in a lot of cases. But you say, I've got this War Sun here. It's towards you. I want to now trade with you. Whatever maybe that takes in some cases, become really good buddies with them and then say, if you're my good buddy, I'll go send this War Sun at other people, and the two of you together can kind of really help each other out. Your War Sun is not there to just put threats on people.
Right.
You have a lot of other things at your disposal. So taking trade early can start establishing that relationship early, which is going to help you a lot in the long run.
For sure.
Anything else? Any other strategy cards?
Tech. I mean, you kind of got to recommend tech if you can get it. I do think I like Warfare better than tech, but I don't know, you could, if you have a blue tech specialty planet in your home slice, and then you diplo that, you're able to secondary diplo that, and then get Gravity Drive round 1. That is nice. A very good round. I am definitely, I don't know if you can tell, I'm definitely in the Gravity Drive is the way to go, not War Sun 2.
Yeah, you don't need a 3 movement War Sun, but you do need a 2 movement War Sun, and Gravity Drive helps you do that.
It ups your options so much, being able to move that War Sun 2 rather than 1. So you're so predictable when your War Sun can only move 1. Right, basically.
Okay, so secondaries. Let's kind of fly through these. These are pretty easy. What do you want to do?
If you don't have Warfare, you should definitely Warfare secondary and build a carrier and some extra ground forces, or a carrier and some fighters. Okay. And then use that to expand, because you weren't able to Warfare your War Sun and expand twice with it. The other one is, I'd say tech.
If you did take Warfare, you have kind of maybe some room.
To spend that money on.
So here's the question I have within this part then is, you've only got 4 guaranteed resources. The goal is to get trade goods, right? You have 4 commodities. You can potentially get those out there. So hopefully you get more money so that you can build that carrier or whatever. Let's say you can't, Hunter. What is your priority? The tech or the units?
The tech.
The tech?
I think
start getting blue tech, get anti-mass or Gravity Drive and move up.
Honestly, there was a thing I was debating, kind of throwing out as a platitude about Embers of Muatt, and it has to do with the eggs in one basket thing. Your eggs are in one basket, right? So don't try and get your egg out of the basket. Lean into the basket. Yeah. your whole thing is that you have a war son, and if you spend the early game just trying to I'm gonna just try and pump all my resources into basically playing like a regular race plus a war son, that never worked for me.
Yeah.
What worked for me is getting to Gravity Drive, getting that war son to a point where I was like, all right,
I can actually
this is
do
a pretty
something.
fearsome weapon that I have.
Right.
And you have to be careful about the activation. Then you have to be very specific when you decide what you're doing with that war son that round. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
I think, if you got in a situation where you got warfare and you were going to secondary tech, that means you're not building any other units, right? Which is scary.
Yeah.
Depending on who your neighbors are, your home system might even get attacked round one. And you need to look for that. That is a weakness that they have.
Don't do that. Don't do the tech thing and leave yourself open if someone is breathing down your neck.
Right. Then that's when you decide to build units instead, to build the carrier or whatever.
But if you're able, get Gravity Drive as quickly as possible.
Also, I could see a situation where, let's theorycraft for just a minute, because this is a hard race, so we're bringing up some pretty specific points, but this could happen. Let's say you got warfare, right? You want to tech secondary. You move out with your war son. You warfare your war son. Now you wait. You maybe use that stall. This is maybe a very good example of an early game stall. You use that Starforge ability to stall another turn so that you can make sure that it's going to be totally cool for you to move your war son to somewhere else and tech that round.
Yeah. I'll say this much, in that same thought process, if you do get tech or you don't get warfare, the big threat from people is, warfare can stall people out. Well, you do have a stall. You have a way to not get stalled. Let's say you took tech and you just you took tech or you took trade, especially in that instance. If you're wanting to get both carriers and everything else, you can use some of your trade money. You can stall for fighters. You can get everything you want, right? Trade's a really good option for that exact purpose. You could get 3 plus maybe even 4 more trade goods. You could get 7 trade goods to have a pretty decent round one. Stall to use the secondary of warfare and do the secondary of tech. That's about the best possible round one I could imagine.
Yeah.
Matt from the future, I realized I was doing some bad mental math here. Obviously, if you spend 1 token to stall, you're not doing both warfare secondary and tech secondary, but you can still build in your home system and get the units out there, and that's what's important, is defending your home system. Except for having warfare and taking a killer equidistant system.
Yeah.
That's ideal. If
super
to 4 is between you and your neighbor and you get there round 1, that's killer.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also a Magic Christmas Land scenario where you build your second war son round 1. We did theorycraft that out.
At one point we thought that was the only ticket out, but we don't think that anymore. But you should look for that Magic Christmas Land of getting lots of trade goods. You have 4 resources. That means you only need 8 more. You can kind of get an easy 7 through trade. If there's a way to get more money, you can do it. Diplomacy would have to factor into that. It's a tricky thing. It exists. Getting the second War Sun helps, but you shouldn't sacrifice everything to do that, maybe.
Another option I want to talk about before we move away from early game strategy cards is the idea of taking a command counter out of fleet pool with warfare.
Yeah.
Don't forget that you can do that. In every single game that I played, I took a command counter out of fleet pool early game because you have a lot of reasons to use command counters, and this is one of those things where... So it's sort of like with the Sardak Nor episode where we're saying, there's a lot of stuff that you need to do, and you can't focus on all of it, right? So here's what we are telling you to focus on. You notice I'm not recommending you get leadership. I'm not recommending you focus on command counters. So that's going to be your Achilles heel, basically. Right. So the reason I say take one out of fleet pool is because you're going to need that command counter early game. So don't do it willy-nilly. But take one. Don't be afraid to take one out of it and take yourself down to 2 because you have a war son.
Yeah.
So
you're good.
First couple rounds, that's your fleet, man.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry.
You don't need extra fleet supply to protect your war son. You just need to get some fighters on it, and the capacity of 6 helps with that plenty. Yeah. So 4 fighters plus the fact that it's a war son is usually enough.
Yeah.
So let's jump into some mid game stuff, shall we?
Yeah.
We have really great commodities.
Mm-hmm.
We should trade them, right? I mean, that's just it. Get a trading buddy. We kind of already established this, but use those trade goods or those commodities a lot.
Oh, for sure. And I think that Muatt is kind of defined by the way that they negotiate on the table.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to frequently call out that Muatt is a scary race. When you play as Muatt, people are going to make you look like a scary bully.
Yeah. You're playing against that meta from the get-go.
Right. And it is okay, actually, for them to be a little bit afraid of you.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't need to perceive you as an enemy.
Right.
So that's why I say it's a really good... it's really good for Muatt to expand to an equidistant planet from your neighbor. Because basically what you're looking for is to approach kind of a negotiating table in the mid-game,
yes.
and you want to go ahead and already have a bigger slice
right.
Before that even happens.
You take a bigger slice, you take the equidistant planet, and you say, if I wanted to, I could go further, but I'm willing to be your trade buddy and stop here if you just let me have my bigger pie slice. I won't get into yours, I'll only get into our shared space, and that's it.
Turn what would be like a possibly hostile neighbor into a trade partner and get those four commodities out there. And in general, this is kind of when we're going to start talking about what kind of options Muatt has at the negotiating table, and they've got kind of some amazing ones.
We actually skipped over this because we're idiots.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm glad we did, so we can harp on it hardcore.
They have a promissory note, and it is the best promissory note in the game.
Yeah,
it's
we're
the best
not
promissory
messing
note
up
in the game.
this week, guys.
Fires of the Gashly. As an action, remove one token from the Muatt player's fleet pool, which we kind of just established isn't...
You gotta be careful.
You gotta be careful, but like you might be able... That might be okay in most cases because you're not going to typically have huge fleets. So they remove one from your fleet pool and return it to your reinforcements. Then gain War Sun unit upgrade technology card. Then return this card to the Muatt player. So what you're doing is you are giving someone the War Sun tech.
Yep, and as an action too. So it's like a stall, basically.
Yeah, for them to do.
Yeah.
So the prevailing thought, I think, when we first saw this was, oh my gosh, no, don't give that out. That's terrible. I continue to see this argument, and I empathize with it because I used to think it. Your advantage is War Sun. Why would you give somebody else your basically only advantage, right? What reason do you have to hand out War Suns when that's the only way you're doing well in this game? And here's why Fires of the Gashly has a good success rate. War Suns still cost 12 resources.
Yep.
So if you hand out Fires of the Gashly around 1 or 2, you're still not going to see that War Sun hit the table for a while. Because most races will not prioritize building their first War Sun over like a normal fleet that like most factions will need, right? There's no need for me to invest all my money in one War Sun. People only get War Suns in the late game when it's like, okay, now I need something to crush all the big fleets that are on the board. So I think your early War Sun advantage maintains through most of the early and mid game.
Yeah, even if you give out the promissory note early, most people really have to like turn their whole game around to like then build this War Sun.
And if anything,
next round.
You want them to do that. Like it is ideal for people to like get so distracted by the idea of like, oh, I can get War Suns now. Like you can catch people off guard, and that's going to be a big thing we talk about with this promissory note later. It's just the idea that like it feels so huge to get it that people will like neglect the rest of their game.
Right. And also, it takes some of the pressure off your like specific War Sun.
Yeah, someone else having a War Sun means you're not the only person with a War Sun, so your War Suns aren't as important to target anymore.
Also, if you can trade it across the table, I'm not even really sure what you're at risk for.
Yeah.
If anything, you've just like
hurt the other side of the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Hunter, what are we trying to get for our promissory note?
Man, there's so many different things. So, to make it really simple, I think you should give out I think you should give it out frequently, but I think it should be for some very specific things. One, whatever you need to get a VP this round.
And that means whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Like if that's a trade good, that's going to be the difference.
Make sure you will guaranteed get that victory point. Don't you're not hedging your bets with your promissory note. Right. You are giving away War Sun technology to guarantee yourself a point.
Right. The reason I say this is that like it is very hard to play Muatt and get like your fleets up and running, get your tech going well, and then also qualify for VPs. It's like when we were talking about Sardak Nor and we were like, hey, like you really got to just follow the VPs. This is like that, basically. Yeah. But the difference is their promissory note is just like, I've traded it for, at this point, probably 3 or 4 victory points in various games, which is huge for a promissory note to make that much of a difference.
Right.
The other instance is, as Muatt, if you lose your War Sun, That's really bad, especially if
just
you haven't
lost
built
your
your
basket.
set. Yeah, it's bad. It's really, really bad to lose your War Sun. And I have been fortunate enough I didn't have any games where I got shut down as Muatt, but I have seen other players get shut down as Muatt, and that's what happened, is they lost their War Sun early and they didn't have their second one up. So I would say this. There is a battle calculator.
Yeah.
That Matt has been posting some places, and maybe I'll
try to post
it somewhere.
In this thread, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very useful for Muatt specifically, because it's just so easy to pull out your thing and be like, okay, I have a War Sun and 3 fighters, and they have all these things, and bam, I did it.
Here's all the odds.
Here's all the odds. If you're about to get in a fight that's bad odds for you, bribe them out of it.
Before they activate that system, say, if you don't activate that, what do you want? Here's War Sun.
You have like a support for the throne level note that doesn't give someone a VP.
Right, exactly. So the first goal was you have something that gains you a VP or it saves your butt. And so effectively you have 2 support for the thrones, and Fires of the Gashly is better than support for the throne in that regard, because you are not giving away a point.
You do have to be careful with the fleet pool thing, but like I said before, like I've even been down to 1 in my fleet supply.
Yeah, right.
And just been like, well, that 1 is my War Sun. So, well.
Yeah, and I want to, while we're talking about the promissory note, I want to say this is going to hurt the Muatt in general, but as a player playing against Muatt, you have to not allow yourself to get distracted by the idea of getting Fires of the Gashly from Muatt.
Sure.
Because you need to pay attention to how many resources you have and how many you're going to be willing to spend on a War Sun. Just getting that tech technically serves no purpose until you put the War Sun on the board. So whatever you're having to spend to get it, plus the 12 resources to get the War Sun, that's a huge cost. What are you not getting in favor of that? So basically, you're going to be tempted by Fires of the Gashly, and you should try not to be. Because Muatt is
I don't know what you're doing right now.
I'm hurting the Muatt.
You're hurting the guy.
I'm hurting the guy. But that's the point.
So the guide's over. Matt canceled the guide. He was like, all right, well, I'm going to do some mid-guide errata. No, I can maybe translate into something useful for Muatt players. Thanks, Matt. Jerk. Don't let the negotiation go too long. Just throw it out there and try and make this happen really fast. It's a big carrot on a stick, basically, giving someone...
keep it on the table, because that's something you were doing, and it worked a lot, because it's not just like... only in the moments you need it, like always keep that idea out there, because at some point someone might forget their other stuff and they'll jump at the opportunity to get it, and that's where it screws up things for them. Like you gotta be constantly...
every game I announced early that I was interested and willing to sell the War Sun tech.
And you would remind people like every round, like every time something was happening, it's just like, don't forget, I've got this War Sun tech and it can be yours.
Encourage people to make you offers for it, and get good stuff for it. Get VPs for it. Let's talk about tech.
Let's talk about mid-game tech path.
A lot of different stuff.
There's a lot of stuff going on. So the first goal was Gravity Drive, right? That's just like have to get Gravity Drive.
I just feel like once you get Gravity Drive, it doesn't take too long to get there.
Right.
And it's you can feasibly get there in a round. You could get there by round 2.
The reason people recommend Prototype War Sun 2 is because it fixes the problem with your first War Sun.
But it sort of overfixes it.
It overfixes it, and Gravity Drive just fixes it.
Yeah.
So all you need is Gravity Drive. So Hunter, what are we aiming for after Gravity Drive?
Well, we want to make sure that we can satisfy 2 tech in 2 different colors.
Sure.
The colors that I'm going to talk about are all blue, red, or yellow. We could not really find a very good argument to go down green.
Yeah.
The reason is this. PDS-2 is actually a really interesting unit upgrade for Muatt.
Yeah.
And throwing down PDS is a very easy and non-fleet supply way to defend your War Suns.
And if you think about, too, like we said earlier, if really your primary fleets are just like a War Sun and some fighters and then another War Sun and fighters, that's a lot of space in between with just like nothing there.
Yeah.
So you have huge incentive to have those 2 War Suns and do a lot of work with them, and the time you're spending not putting fleets is getting construction and putting down PDS in opportune places that protect the rest of your pie slice.
I'm going to talk about my ideal early to mid-game tech path real quick, just so that people understand exactly where I'm coming from. My ideal situation would be that 2 tech in 2 different colors, that victory point does not come out in the first round. So that doesn't happen, right? So then we go blue. We go straight for gravity drive. Maybe we have to get anti-mass, whatever. That's okay. You get anti-mass, you get gravity drive, and then you hop over to yellow. You get Sarween, and you get Graviton Laser Systems. You throw down PDS-2.
Yeah.
You have a PDS network, and that's just great. Yeah. Like, that's really great.
Don't forget that sometimes getting PDS-2 before Graviton is going to help. I mean, Graviton doesn't do anything for you if you don't have useful PDSs. And if the 2 tech, 2 colors... The only reason we say get Graviton first is because a lot of times 2 tech, 2 colors is out. Get that second yellow. Be done with it. But otherwise, yes, definitely get PDS-2 and get Graviton after.
Yeah, but also 2 unit upgrade might come out too.
What's your second unit upgrade?
Second unit upgrade, whatever.
You qualify for Carrier 2?
You could get Carrier 2. You could even, depending on how, if you had to go red instead of yellow, or God forbid red instead of blue, I really feel like Grav Drive is necessary. You could go after Destroyer 2 just for the point.
Right.
But
a lot of people, we didn't go down this path, but a lot of people recommend getting, you get Neuromotivator. If you've already got a red and a yellow, you can now get Cruiser 2. Your flagship pumps out cruisers. We didn't want to go with this because being able to pump out 3 movement cruisers from anywhere doesn't seem that useful. They're already 3 movement cruisers. They can come from your space dock, and it's not a big deal. So we didn't think this path was worth investing in. But if you have time, getting Cruiser 2 isn't a terrible thing to kind of like help the fact that your War Suns aren't getting in other places. Your cruisers can get in some places that your War Suns can't.
It's an alternate path, and I think
it's a win more path too.
Right.
You're not doing it in a game that you're going to normally be in, which is where you're up against it.
Yeah, I think with this guide, we're very specifically taking the slant of being like, we're not going to fix our command counter problem. We're going to try and manage it and get other things under control.
Right.
So that whole build the flagship and pump out cruiser bit. That's not a bit that we're doing in this one.
Yeah,
It's not really helping us with our goals right now. In the mid to late game, you can then swing back into prioritizing command counters, which can get kind of dicey because there are lots of command counter victory points that might come out that are, that part can be really hard. Honestly, CCs are where Muatt, it's kind of the Achilles heel of the whole setup.
So, Hunter, you keep saying that. Why are we running out of CCs? What are we doing with our command counters? What's happening early game with all of our command counters?
Because I'm just recommending that you not prioritize leadership. It's just that you have so many things that you need to do.
Yeah.
And CCs will just seem like one too many things to recommend you fix that too. It's like when a house is on fire, like wait, this isn't a good. I don't know. What
you want your house to be on fire. It is on fire.
So your house is on fire, and it's a war sun, and that's the analogy here.
Yes.
And you want to burn the certain parts of the house first.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's what it
that's
is.
It
so
is.
We're an arsonist. And I've got it now. So we're an arsonist, and we're setting this house on fire, right? We want to burn the kitchen, right? Because we got that gas stove in there, and that's going to blow up.
That's going to do way more damage.
So we're taking that as a priority, whereas the command counters is like the chimney.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a priority. It's going to burn last. You know? It's going to be high. Why would
It'll be left standing after the fact.
Dude, if you started with the chimney, it would just stay in the chimney.
Yeah. And so all that is to say, too, like, we kind of continue the idea of, like, we're not using Starforge that often into the mid-game. Because you shouldn't be wasting your command counters because you need to be careful. Because if you run out of command counters because you just decided to stall with Starforge a few times, that's going to probably hurt you more in the long run because then there's going to be like one activation you can't send your War Sun to do right when you need it.
Right.
Your War Suns need to be like always at the ready to attack whatever planet you need to get. Okay, Hunter, what went wrong? What went wrong in round 1 and how do we fix it?
There's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Let's get the one thing out of the way. Yes, you could lose your War Sun. That's tragic. Okay. How do you fix it is you flail and you hope to somehow get money from other players.
No. How you fix it, and that's kind of the whole thing with me being like, don't worry about command counters, try and focus on other things, is you're a trade and a negotiator.
Right.
So
you shouldn't lose the War Sun.
Well, you shouldn't lose it in the first place, but for some reason you do lose it. You have to trade your way back into getting a War Sun and getting back up there.
Yeah.
So this is if you lose your War Sun, just hang in there. Do it. You have a great
Start
promissory
negotiating.
note. Throw it out there. Maybe throw it out there a couple times.
Yeah.
Whatever. Everybody has War Sun now. Whatever you got to do to get yourself back in the game.
Yeah. Okay, so what else? What kind of like more specific kind of nuanced ways could your round 1 go bad?
Well, I do want to reiterate that your home system will more than likely be vulnerable round 1. You have a war sun, but you have to move it, right? Like, you can't just, like, let it sit at home. I don't know, like, taking the trade strategy card and trying to get as many trade goods as possible, getting that 7, basically, 3 for the card, 4 for your commodities. Hopefully throwing in a few more planets to get your second War Sun. Like, that's...
You really want to get your second War Sun round 2. If you can make it happen.
If you can make second War Sun happen round 2, I think that's the most ideal. If you can get to Gravity Drive and second War Sun as soon as possible...
You might be okay.
Think about how versatile that pie slice is now. We've got 2 War Suns. They can move on a 2.
Mm-hmm.
We have, like... We probably... have low fleet supply, but whatever. We're really just depending on those. We're leaning on the War Sun really, really heavy early to mid-game.
Right.
And then hopefully swinging back.
Okay. So because we have these War Suns, who do we counter?
I think kind of the people that focus on ground forces. You've got a lot of bombardment with plasma scoring. You have 4
a lot of really good bombardment. And this, to harp back on that battle calculator, this is just something we recently found, and it has been incredibly helpful. Realizing the math of, like, a 1v1 ground combat, if you're trying to take a planet, it's incredibly hard to take planets. Statistically speaking. You are really, going on a wing and a prayer. That's not the phrase. All right. You're really hoping against hope that you can take a planet. And so bombardment becomes a huge deal, and you have the best bombardment in the game, and you start with it. You start with 4 on a 3.
Right.
So those races that want to get out, take a planet, and hold it quickly, which was our entire suggestion for the Soul strategy, you can, if you decide to, act as an anti-Soul. You can just crush them before they get huge stacks of guys on planets. Like, they come and they try to take that equidistant system. First off, they're not going to. If you're their neighbor, they're going to go the other direction. Because they know that you're going to crush them. So for the most part, you're kind of a Soul deterrent. Mm-hmm. But if also Soul goes for that big Mechatol play, you'll notice we haven't ever recommended you be the Mechatol faction.
You can't afford that second target on your back, basically.
But you can be the person who steps in when Soul or someone else takes Mechatol, and you can be like, you guys want this dealt with? I'll take some trade goods from everybody if they want me to just go ahead and wipe them off the Mechatol.
I actually think that's a huge play for the table, too. If you're at the table and Soul does their... and whoever...
You should know how big of a deal that is.
Right, you should know how big of a deal that is. So let's say, like, you've got this real smart person that listened to Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the Soul strategy guide, and they're like, I'm going to go for Mechatol and stack ground forces there. Pay Muatt to remove them. There's no... I can't even think of any other race that could early game remove Soul.
If the other 4 players at the table all say, we will each give you 2 trade goods, Muatt, to remove Soul from Mechatol, everybody's benefiting from that. Everyone spent very little, Muatt gained a lot, and you took out what will be a game-winning strategy.
Seriously, I actually, this is one of the only times I think we've recommended a strategy like this. If you are not Soul or Muatt and you are at that table and Soul is doing that, support Muatt in making that happen.
Don't just be like, you need to do it anyways, because they don't. They don't need to take Mechatol. They're already struggling, so to them, removing a problem from the table isn't useful unless they can get something out of it, and you should be willing to pay them. Who else do we hurt?
Arborek. I think you even hurt Arborek a little more solidly than Soul. It's just juicier to bring up Soul first. Arborek, I think, really struggles with the idea of, like, they have, like, kind of a slower game start, and then, like, Muatt has this, like, pretty much Arborek killing machine. I would say if you are starting next to Arborek as Muatt, just pressure them. Go hard on them. Don't let them have a fun time.
You wrote down Sardak Nor, and I think people are going to have a hard time understanding your reasoning. So break it down.
It's kind of specific, but I just feel like Sardak gets a lot out of that infantry advantage, and because of your bombardment, and really just because War Suns are so strong early game, and Sardak has such a slow early game start, I don't feel particularly afraid of Sardak, and I actually feel like you could push them around a little bit early to mid game. I just
need to do it early is the big thing, because the argument is they're going to get super dreadnoughts, and those are designed to destroy War Suns. But like we talked so much about in the Sardak episode, it actually takes quite a lot for Sardak to get to their super dreadnoughts. They start with nothing, and they need to get 4 techs to get up to that point.
I'm willing
so
to
you have a timing window to hurt them very badly.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to do that. I guess really the only reason I put them down there is I feel like if I was sitting next to a Sardak, I would be like, this is my target. Like,
yeah. Especially the more you hurt them early, the more you slow down their ability to get super dreadnoughts.
Right.
If you're taking planets from them, they're never going to get super dreadnoughts.
But let me just go ahead and like be crystal clear. I don't even really think that Embers is a late game like counter to anyone.
No, you're an early game race.
Direct hit really hurts you.
When people anytime people have hands of action cards, you are now in trouble. Yeah. And so you have like 3 rounds to do some work.
You wrote down Winnu, Matt, if you want to explain why you feel like Embers is
as a Winnu player, the Winnu player wants to take Mechatol. If your War Sun is anywhere close to Mechatol, they are 100% terrified of you. And a big part of my Winnu strategy is going to be getting there and getting a bunch of ground forces down. And if all it takes is for you to come over and do a single bombardment to ruin that whole strategy, Winnu is looking for as many ways as possible to have that sentence not happen to them. Oh, an easy way for me to ruin Winnu's strategy. That's what Muatt has. And so, if anything, you are sort of...
Yeah, don't forget War Sun disables Planetary Shield. Yeah. So when Winnu gets that free PDF on Mechatol, it does not matter.
So they're terrified of you. Again, you probably don't have a huge amount of incentive, but if the table wanted to pay you to take out Winnu on Mechatol, you're going to 100% crush Winnu. They're done. And it didn't cost you that much. If anything, you gained something from it. You probably gained some trade goods if people are willing.
Muatt players get the table to pay you to dislodge someone from Mechatol because it's... I could not make an argument for you to rush for Mechatol. It seems way too risky. Some people are going to like write in and say like, "Oh, I did that and that worked." And that's great, but I can't it doesn't feel like the safest play.
You already have a target on your back, or people are going to try to say you have a target on your back. People will say they're afraid of your War Suns, and if you put those War Suns in the middle of the map on the best planet, you're asking for trouble.
And also, I can't recommend it because we're not recommending this like command counter like angle on Muatt, and I feel like the command counter angle is kind of the only one where like, you could go to Mechatol. But see, the problem there, the reason I couldn't do that too is like, what am I going to tell you that you have to get to Grav Drive, build a second War Sun, and go to Mechatol? That's too many things. If you go to the Soul episode, I recommend Mechatol because it's like, all right, do one thing, then do it. Like, get Grav Drive, then go. Like, that's
what we're trying to do with strategy.
That's a simple strategy recommendation.
Okay, so who counters us? First and foremost, we just talked about it.
Yssaril tribes.
Direct hit counters us, and Yssaril tribes are guaranteed to have it.
I actually think Yssaril tribes might be the best counter to...
Yeah, they have mobility, so they can strike at your War Sun whenever they want, basically. They can just decide to do it at some point. And they're almost guaranteed to have a direct hit. So your War Sun is dead if Yssaril decides to come at it.
Yeah.
It just is, which is why you need that sabotage. But you know what? Yssaril might have 2 direct hits.
Right.
I mean, if I'm a Yssaril and Muatt is in the game, I will always bank some direct hits. Like, why wouldn't you? You have infinite cards. You will never turn away a direct hit when you have to throw away a card. Who else?
Extra.
Why?
Because PDS network plus Graviton laser system equals...
is a death sentence.
Yeah, or their flagship equals you don't get to use your fighter screens, basically.
Yeah, you need your fighter screens, and you need to score 3 hits with your War Sun. Like, that's where the power comes in. So if people get to take you out before combat, that's a really big problem for you.
Yeah. And it's very much a counter to the way that we're even recommending you play Muatt.
Yeah.
Yin Brotherhood.
Definitely.
Maybe the most obvious one. Right. And definitely the one that I think not to be condescending, but I feel like people see this one a lot. Like if you even have a new player and you explain to them, this is the Yin, this is how they work, this is how Muatt works, they're going to be like, oh, I think I just made a connection.
Yeah,
here.
You see the math equations above their head, and it's like, yes, the Yin have little ships.
I can destroy that.
Yeah. So it's there. I mean, there's some struggle for it. I did this to a Muatt in the game. I was
devastated that Muatt.
Yeah, I devastated Muatt. I'll say this for the Yin Brotherhood, it kind of devastated me too. Right. Both of us were out of that game, so I don't know that it's a winning strategy for Yin.
Well, do the calculation properly.
But exactly. Don't I did it too fast. I had a timing opportunity to attack Muatt, and I decided I needed to jump on it, and I shouldn't have. I could have done it later. Exactly. Yeah. So, who else?
L1Z1.
They've got that flagship.
They get to ignore your fighter screens. Anybody that we're very much recommending a kind of a classic like War Sun with fighter screens approach. So anybody that can ignore those fighter screens is a problemo.
Yeah. The Ghosts of Creus are another one you've written down.
This is a conditional one.
Yes.
This is early game. I feel like Ghosts of Creus can be a very scary neighbor because you have all your eggs in one basket, you're very exploitable from races that are like super mobile.
Yeah.
So like any race that can get somewhere that would be really pesky or like difficult for you. Matt, there was one game where you threatened to activate my home system very early game as Ghost. You didn't end up doing it because in fact, really in that game, we had more reason to be friends than enemies, definitely. But it was hard for us to figure out where we were at with that. Yeah. It was difficult.
But I could have easily done it.
Yeah, he could have done it.
And there's going to be games where the Ghost can easily do it and have no incentive not to.
Right. And
even just like putting a destroyer there, if you just throw one destroyer in Muatt's home system, they're crushed.
Right. Because
they're not going to get that second War Sun out anytime soon. They have to turn around with their slow War Sun and take their home system back.
If anything, that's a little bit of piece of Ghost strategy for like just kind of early before we get to the guide. Yeah, be a nuisance to other players early game. We have an honorable mention that we want to talk about as far as they counter us. They counter
the
Muatt.
Mentak sort of, we're not calling it like a hard counter or anything like that, but Mentak is someone you have some problems with. The big thing that I wanted to point out was their flagship has units in the system can't use sustained damage, but Hunter, I think rightfully said that's not a huge deal because you're already afraid of direct hit. Yeah, you're already afraid of all these things. Right. You don't have enough other things blocking damage. So, like, honestly, the fact that a War Sun has sustained damage isn't even really helping you that much. Getting Duranium armor on your War Sun doesn't even help you that much because direct hit is the biggest threat.
Right. You're more scared of using that system. I mean, what? There was a round of combat in one of the games we played where I was like, I had this fighter screen, I was taking hits on it, and we were getting lower and lower, and I was like, if I sustain damage, I will make it to the next round of combat and win. And this was with the War Sun, and I was like, well, I'm going to chance it, and I chanced it and direct hit, and I was dead. And I hate it. I hate it.
Truly terrible. The other thing, too, is we talked about pre-fire combat abilities. So Mentak have cruisers. Mentak might have lots of incentive to be like, hey, anyone want to give me 2 trade goods to send 2 cruisers at that War Sun, and I can just
actually, you know what? I'll throw out a little olive branch here. I thought something just occurred to me about Mentak that is actually kind of scary. They are one of, because I think we keep forgetting about this, but there is a Mentak out there that goes for PDS. So
absolutely,
the PDS Mentak is pretty scary for all of the same reasons that the Extra is. Yeah. So it's just like a little less so than Extra. Really, I mean, at this point, I think we've gotten to a point with the counter section of the episodes where we're kind of like, we're doing a lot of free jazz with like, is it the race or is it like
the unit thing? Ability?
So like, there's I think a world where we do this and the counters is direct hit and PDS
exactly.
And
we don't even need to talk about factions. We just talk about the things that are good, and you can do the math.
It's also fun to. Yeah. It's neither system is perfect, and I think in this section we kind of just throw out what makes sense to us, and we let the community fill in the gaps, and you guys always do.
So Hunter, what makes the Embers of Muatt a superpower?
War Suns. Adios. Good episode.
But also, right. But there is a much bigger deal.
Right. I would say more so that promissory note. Yep. What we really tried to emphasize in this episode is that the strength of that War Sun promissory note and the need for you as the Embers of Muatt to negotiate with your fellow players and to be an honest player. This was something that someone commented on the stream. I'm so sorry I don't remember the name of the person that did it, but they mentioned that in their opinion, Muatt has to be honest and open. Yeah. And I agree with that, but that's why I say it's so key to take a bigger pie slice early.
Yep.
You need to come to the negotiating table kind of already
having what you need.
Yeah.
You're not looking to gain more, you're just looking to keep people off your back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do think that this is a race that needs a buddy, that needs to, the meta has to work out for you. And luckily, you have a really good promissory note to help you with that.
Yeah.
And do not be afraid of it. Plan around it. This is another reason that you're going to lose CCs. We gave up on the CC thing, guys.
Right, like we gave up on it. It is a strategy that you could try. Please tell us how it goes and how often it goes that well.
I feel like it's very hard to do the CC thing and do the other things that we talked about. And I think I just picked the things that make sense to me, which is grab drive and putting this promissory note out there.
So, let's close this thing out. Hunter Donaldson, where are we looking for our victory with the Embers of Muatt?
Clever, timely negotiation.
Right.
Getting, basically, focusing on VPs. Don't get so greedy. Look at the VPs and follow them a la Sardak Noor.
Yeah.
Consider yourself kind of behind in this area, and you need to really hyper focus on it. Luckily, in this way, I think you're in a little bit better position than Sardak, because you just have your War Sun as that leverage, and you need to use that War Sun to basically make up for all of the shortcomings that you have as a race in other ways. Yeah. And you need to use it in a meta way. You need to use it off the table. Notice there wasn't a lot of talk of use your War Sun to crush the puny other fleets. Right. It becomes a tie, basically.
Yeah. You make an enemy, and they stop at nothing to take out that War Sun.
Right. And then they get direct hit, and they do easily. Right. And then it's done.
So in that way, it's almost similar to the Soul thing, which is just like, get what you need as quickly as possible, and hold it.
Right.
You don't need 3 movement War Suns, because you're not looking to jump out and take crazy victory points no one was expecting. You need to play a solid game inside your pie slice, which you've made bigger than a normal pie slice. Yeah. Your other big resource at your disposal is your War Sun promissory note.
Right.
You have 2 huge bargaining chips, and you are looking to use them to every advantage you can possibly get from them. Mm-hmm. So
big slice, protected by a War Sun, protected by a PDS network if possible. I mean, I did that every game I played. I felt like that made sense. So PDS network, big slice, negotiate with the rest of the table, throw that promissory note out there for at least 1 VP per game. Yeah. And maybe you'll do it. Right. Maybe
but you'll probably get to 8 points or 7 points and just not quite clinch it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was. And I think if I'd kept playing Muatt, I think this guide could have been probably just this, really basically the same. I just would have been like, okay, it did work.
It did work one time. Yeah. All
right,
let's do some errata for the last 2 episodes. We combined these together not just because we got behind on them, but because this errata that we're about to do, there are 2 topics that are very tied together. So let's jump into the errata.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. Hey, what's up? This is the podcast, Space Cats, Peace Turtles, Errata. It is a podcast within a podcast hosted by Hunter Donaldson, featuring our frequent guest and hardly collaborator, Matt Martins. He just hangs out. I'm doing all the work. What up, babies? This side of the podcast has a lot more zest, and we're going to do fun stuff like talk about how dumb we are and how people know it. And they were like, hey, man, you dumb about this. All right, first one. About etiquette and elimination.
We're talking about 2 episodes ago.
It's from Shake Signal.
Oh my God, this is so annoying.
Shake Signal. They've got a quick note on secret objectives. The learn to play and the rules reference pretty clearly state that your secret objective must remain hidden until it is fulfilled. Quick thing, what is this in direct response to within our...
We talked about the idea of players... Mm-hmm. opting to basically give each other secret objectives. Hey, I need to be next to your home trading system, and if you need to do this thing, then we can work together, and let me just tell you what that is.
And what Shake Signal is effectively saying is that this is not against the rules.
Right, this is strictly against the rules. Well, okay, here is sort of the issue with that, and I'll just kind of read this off, because I typed this up earlier. The definition of remaining hidden is vague. The TI3 ruling was if you reveal it, it is lost.
I actually thought that was a great rule, though, by the way.
It kind of was, yeah. If you reveal your strategy or your secret objective, you do not get to have it anymore. But this was not carried over to TI4. In TI3, lying about your secret objective isn't revealing, so neither should telling the truth about the card. This is kind of how our group ended up playing it, is the fact that, like, so long as you do not physically show the card to someone, anything else you say is nothing. You're not revealing anything. So it is... by definition of, like, the rules, there's nothing that, like, clearly states what you are and are not allowed to do. In TI4, it gets even weirder, but the end result is remaining hidden is only there to clarify that it is not required for action cards and secret objectives to stay face up in your play area like most of the other game components. It is separating these 2 components from the rest of the components, saying you get these and they are hidden and they stay face down. That doesn't mean you can't talk about them, and even to a certain extent, Dane Beltrami himself has ruled you can show these cards to other players. Mm-hmm. So that's it. So to extend that any further, it becomes a house rule. I don't think there's any problem with a group of players deciding they don't like what that does to the game, and you could easily house rule that. But rules as written, you can show cards to anybody no matter what. And that's coming from Dane Beltrami. So that's the only, for this week, that's the only errata that is like a sort of correction or question and answer. Everything from this point forward, we already did all of everything we can try to talk about with these two subjects. We did a lot of, last week was a roundtable discussion on kingmaking. The week before that was just like discussing etiquette.
Can I talk real quick before we get into everyone else's opinions? I feel like I'm really glad we did the roundtable episode.
Yes.
And it was very fun, and I'm really glad that you guys got to kind of meet Alex a little bit. I think you'll be hearing a lot from him, or hopefully a lot more from him as the show goes on here and there. One thing that I kind of wish had been better about it was we did not really like pre-interview as far as figuring out, okay, well, where do you stand? Where do you stand? Where do you stand?
Yeah.
If it's going to be a round table, you want a lot of different perspectives.
Right.
And I actually feel like me and Alex saw eye to eye on a lot as we were going on, which is definitely not a knock against Alex. He's dope. But it's more of a...
We went into that round table cold.
Right.
With no knowledge of even, like, I had a couple things written down that I knew I wanted to talk about, but we did not know where any of the points were going to go.
Right.
And so, to that end, there's a lot of stuff we missed. There's perspectives we didn't get included.
We were always going to miss perspectives. There's merely
Absolutely.
3 people. But I feel like next time you hear us try something like that again, which we will.
Yeah, we loved doing it, and we want to do more.
I think you can expect that there will be more distinct perspectives at the table, and we're going to rig it next time.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, let's just see what happens, because we were just trying it out. My feeling is next time I want to have, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 people, and they all see it very differently.
Right.
And it's just
Hash
like
it
rabid dogs and meat, and we're just like, all
right. So, getting back into etiquette, elimination, kingmaking, support for the throne. We're talking about everything kind of all at once. We're leading with some elimination and etiquette stuff. Dropouts of Jolnar from the Twilight Imperium subreddit says
a fun
it is
name.
a dope name. I am surprised you think it's bad etiquette to help each other score victory points. This is kind of in that same talk about secret objectives. I strongly disagree. We have a very experienced group of players, and we always help each other out. Being political and gaining something when you weren't going to receive anything to begin with not only is beneficial to yourself, but it also creates a great atmosphere with your play group. Although I could see your point of view if you're playing in a tournament setting and you want to actively prevent people from scoring VPs, but in my experience, home games flourish when people spend the first half of the game working together. That being said, all bets are off come turns 5 and 6. He nibbled at this comment to say, I wholeheartedly agree with you about point swapping. I do not see it as bad etiquette, but rather something that will earn you a target on your backs. So both of these people are talking about the idea that point swapping and kind of alliances in general, it's just all part of the game. And I think this is really the issue of this whole topic. And this is the running theme through both of these episodes and all of this errata is lots of people play Twilight Imperium with lots of different reasons in mind.
Yeah, or just different emotional states, basically.
So, for Hunter and I, we play to your second point, Dropouts of Jolnar, which is we play every game as though it's basically a tournament. I mean, we are playing to score VPs. In our opinion, that is the point of the game. The point of the game is to win it, so you should play to win. And so, all bets being off come turn 5 or 6, for us, it's all bets are off from the get-go.
Right.
And anything that happens, we used to play that way. We used to play very actively with like, ooh, I'll trade you a secret objective for a secret objective. And we eventually realized that we enjoyed our games more when we didn't allow that. So we have to boil this one down to player preference. I mean, there's lots of groups that want to have a good time and not be at each other's throats, but there's a lot of groups that they play Twilight Imperium because they want to scream at each other, and that is what Hunter and I do.
I like that. I like that you started out kind of diverging, and then in the end you made it sound like how what we do is wrong.
Yeah.
And your dropouts of Jolnar is a very normal human being. It does come down to player preference. I just feel like I want negotiation in the okay. All right. How about this? I'm gonna shed a little light. I think in a way, instead of being like, oh, we're crazy people and we scream at each other.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and justify our spot a little more. I think the reason we got into Twilight Imperium is because of political stuff and negotiation, and we loved that it was a game that was more about politics than it was about war. But point swapping and like a very friendly, like easy teaming atmosphere, we feel like didn't lead to hardcore enough negotiations. Now it sounds like what in your experience dropped out Jolnar is that everything's all super sweet and friendly until round 5 and 6,
and then it gets vicious,
right? And that is pretty cool. Like that's definitely not like. And I think for a while we had lots of games that was the general flow of them.
I'll say this much: your kind of mentality there is what I think feeds into the most king-making opportunities.
Yeah.
If two people got this huge advantage because they just helped each other, that's going to turn into a king-making situation at the end of the game. And so for us, in a way to preemptively avoid king-making, and the reason probably we don't have that many instances of like pure, uninterrupted king-making is because we're always combating each other, and there aren't that many times where like multiple players are completely out of it. Usually we have a pretty decently spread pack with maybe like one person trailing.
Right.
So
yeah, and the other thing too is in our play groups, that kind of behavior earns the ire of every other.
Exactly. It's not a healthy way to play. Ottawa Pops, this is going to feed off that same point. Ottawa Pops says, assume a 6-player game. All players are at 0. 2 of those players swap support for the thrones. Now, 4 players at 0, 2 players at 1. The net relative effect is, it is as if you had just said, let us both agree to dock everyone else at the table 1 point in relative standings. There's a secondary benefit in that you will remain peaceful with one of those neighbors, allowing resources to be focused on less than peaceful activity elsewhere. An early support for the throne trade helps to incentivize the peace on the border between both parties. As it stands, I view a turn 1 support for the throne swap as a go-to strategy for every game I go into. I will never play that way.
Yeah.
For myself.
I just feel like even in the way that you structured it at Ottawa Pops, you could easily just say all of those things and end it with, now 4 players are against the 2 of us. Like we have and that's how it would go down.
You all just got that's what he nibbles at comments. His point was, you now all have targets on your back now. But the whole point is, for a lot of people, that's just part of the game. Is we took this advantage, and with our advantage comes the target of the other players,
right?
And so that now you're playing Twilight Imperium, right? So
right.
it's all valid, but for us, strategically speaking, we don't like playing that way. I will say I'm pulling away a little bit from thinking it's bad etiquette in a lot of these cases.
It's probably not bad etiquette.
It's just we don't like that strategy anymore. Topaz Dragon 5676 says, if you and another player are in an alliance and the other player wins, you lost. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Not only did you lose, but you actively participated in causing yourself to lose. Additionally, if you are in an alliance, especially a non-support for the throne-based one, you should be willing to break that alliance and attack your partner if it will help you win. That is like the gist of my perspective.
Yeah.
This is how I think about alliances. Promissory notes are goods in exchange for services, and alliances are that service. But at some point, that service will be revoked. I do not look at alliances as permanent things because I do not play the type of game where I am interested in making my ally the winner if I can't hold on to it. If I'm not going to win, I'm going to try to crush the winner, and if that happened to be the person I had an alliance with, that's a problem.
Doesn't matter.
The game we just played the other day, I traded an early ceasefire with the Arborec because they came into my high slice. I paid other people to crush them. We were both going to just fall by the wayside, and we had a conversation that said, if we keep this up, we're doomed. So we traded the ceasefire. And what happened? The game-winning move for me could have only been stopped by Arborec, and Arborec could not activate my systems.
Yeah.
I won the game because of that ceasefire. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other reasons I won that game, but for me as a player, if Arborec had won the game and I could have stopped them with my ceasefire, I would be so mad that I didn't remove that ceasefire earlier.
Right.
Because that alliance led to me losing the game. But in this case, it led to me winning. So I love that the alliance existed, right? It's all a matter of perspective, and it breaks down depending on what the results are.
I think we just view, it's exactly like how Topaz Dragon views it. Like, if you come to the game and you already view alliances as not being, like, permanent, or, like, if it really just comes down to, like, oh, like, this isn't really an alliance so much as this is an exchange of services, it's very hard to create the kind of, like, let's trade VPs sort of atmosphere. Right. And it's a more competitive atmosphere. But it doesn't have, like, we're not saying that, like, the way we play is right and the way that other people play is wrong. It's more about, like, how does this show play the game?
Yeah, if you're listening to our podcast, we're coming from that perspective. So we will rarely describe a strategy in which we talk about having a buddy, right? We talk in these weak races, we are fully a proponent of get an ally. The problem,
but it's for something.
It's for something. And the big thing is, this is kind of my other counter argument, is if you are one of those races that doesn't require an ally, if you're a Jolnar or a Hakan, you are only hurting yourself by getting an ally.
Yeah.
Because you are making less powerful races more powerful.
Right.
So if you are Jolnar, Hakan, maybe even Sol, I would never enter into any sort of binding agreement with anybody because you are only weakening your own position.
Yeah.
Because you can win without it.
Right.
You can just win by yourself.
Right, yeah. When I played that, probably the best game of Twilight Imperium I played, that Soul game, the entire table was against me for the entire game.
Right.
It was literally
Didn't
me
matter.
and 5 other people just being like, how are we going to get them?
Yeah, exactly.
For hours. Oh my god, that was crazy.
Barney Lowe says it's all about what's going to be most fun for the table to witness. And if I knew, this is kind of talking more about elimination, if I knew my enemy wouldn't enjoy the table time, if I really crushed them, I wouldn't do it. I love winning this game, but I love getting the opportunity to play it with friends that get a kick out of even more. Player elimination, especially of the new players who might be the only ones likely to fall foul of it, does a disservice to those of us who are trying to popularize this game amongst new players. This is a big point that I like. I think Barney Lowe brought up other things within this discussion, but elimination for some groups is fascinating and fun, and like at the right timing, again, like this is that Clan Asar argument, right? If you eliminate a Clan Asar player, it's because they were like about to win in almost every case. The elimination that happens early game because you just like got someone under your thumb and completely snuffed them out. That doesn't happen very often, and it's just not fun for the table, and
It's probably not good for the eliminator, too.
Yeah.
Like, that was something I feel like we talked about.
We did.
Yeah.
But all this is to say, if your group is a group that is down with elimination, then that's this is the Blarknob defense. They play every week. Elimination is not a big deal to them. So it just, again, comes down to group preference. Almost every group will not like elimination, is sort of the big point there.
Yeah, it's just
most people don't play enough.
It's salty.
Yeah. Live Strong Belwas, which I've said this on Twilight Imperium subreddit before. You have the best name in Twilight Imperium.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Strong Belwas is a character in the A Song of Ice and Fire books, which is what the Game of Thrones TV series is adapted from. He has some of the greatest moments in the whole series, and they gave all of his moments to Dario Naharis, and Dario Naharis is a lame character, so when Dario Naharis does things that Strong Belwas was supposed to do, it's lame. So that's why we say, live strong, Strong Belwas, because you are the better character and you should have been in the show.
Okay.
So that's Matt's, thank you for joining us in a podcast within a podcast, Matt's Game of Thrones zone. Let's turn it back to Hunter and Hunter's errata. Hunter, give us Live Strong Belwas'
Matt's Game of Thrones zone. That is... icky. All right, well, Live Strong Belwas or whatever your name is. So in the kneecapping section, you talk about kneecapping a good player, like Hunter is fair game. I generally agree, but since I am seen as the good player or the hunter, okay, watch it, dude. In my game group, it often means that there are some early kneecapping attempts made against me. Therein lies my dilemma. I know the game well enough, and I'm adequate at sensing other people's motives. I'm usually able to spot a betrayal or kneecap attempt in the making. I've also seen players gearing up their war fleet on my border, only to signal jam one portion and then preemptively annihilating the other half. Oh, that's great. In my opinion, these actions are not bullying, but fair, if sometimes preemptive, responses to kneecapping attempts against me.
Yeah. So all this to say, in the kneecapping discussion, kneecapping goes both ways. Right?
Yeah,
and that's sort of the argument against kneecapping strategically, more so than etiquette. Etiquette-wise, it sucks, but like if someone kneecaps you, you can probably turn things around on them. This is exactly what happened in our last game. Arborek came in, took some plans from me, and it was going to be a kneecap. Right. I would have been crushed.
Right.
But I then immediately said, I will pay anybody my support for the throne to go hurt Arborek. Now, the trick there is Ghost was already planning on doing it, but I solidified the fact that they would do it. Ghost went, helped me out. Arborek got then kneecapped enough to where it pulled me back into the game, and that's what led to me winning. So if you want an argument against kneecapping, it's just as simple as you might get crushed way harder because you took an action like that.
Yeah, if the table like comes against you. If you can generally organize a table against one player, it's not going to go well.
It's not going to go well.
Yeah.
And this was a fun discussion that kind of brings up Jada Pake, our required mention in every episode.
Our king. We are just in service to him.
He has a post on Board Game Geek called The Metagame List, and I do strongly encourage, this is an older post, it's been there for a while, but I strongly encourage everyone to read it. He breaks down just a ton of metagame terms, things like kneecapping, things like kingmaking, but way more. I mean, there's like 30 terms listed out.
I want to do an episode on it with him. I want to just be like, hey, let's go through your...
Let's just break it down, because
post.
it is... He defined a lot of different types of behaviors and put all of them in the pantheon of, like, these are things that will happen in Twilight Imperium, and it is up to your group to decide which of these are acceptable and which aren't, because they will all happen if you let it go unmentioned.
It's super good, because, like, we're kind of getting to a point where I'm like, what are we going to do episodes about? And then Jada Pig does something like that, and I'm like,
I can do it. Yeah. So, to get more into kingmaking, Becky Rose from Board Game Geek says, if you attack a player in the early game and put them out of contention, and then in late game the player finds themselves in a position to kingmake, well, you brought it on yourself. And I think this is a good point. If you had to climb your way to the top by climbing over the corpses of your enemies, don't expect those enemies to fight on your behalf later in the game. And this is to say, if you crushed someone, not just like, oh, we had a spat and then moved on. When it's like you kneecap the Arborec and they find their footing later in the game and you're about to win, you can bet they're going to do everything they can to crush you.
Sure. There's a lot of dramatic tension in that too, like a lot, like as a story that kind of like works
That's
really
an important part of the story of that game. Yeah. Aegon07 says, my point of view about kingmaking, they break down 4 points here, and I want to say I feel like these 4 things cover everything there is to say about kingmaking. I think this covers every perspective. Yeah. It's very succinct.
As long as I have a slight chance, I will play for myself. If I really have no chances anymore, and I am in a tournament, I will play considering my points toward the entire tournament. So what is best for me for the tournament? If I have no chance in a friendly game, I will support the one I had the best relationship with towards the game. Imagine yourself in real world. You have the power. You alone choose your next leader for your country. I personally will choose the one I like and trust the most and share the same values with. I approach this the same way in the game. I also consider my reputation towards all future games. If I have an ally, I will kingmake him, as it will increase the value of being my ally in the eyes of the other players for the next game, and it will make them think twice about betraying me in future games.
So, I think this consolidates down into every perspective you could possibly have about kingmaking. Mm-hmm. It's, I'm always looking for the chances to win, and I'm going to try to win, and I'm going to do everything in my power to win.
Me.
There may not be any chances, but we're playing in some sort of other setting where we're still encouraging people to try to get second place or third place. Doug. Some people do that. There's also lots of posts that have happened recently where people just say, like, they play in a league, and that is a genuine mechanic that they have implemented into Twilight Imperium.
After we get done with the guides, I want to do a league.
Yeah, that would be fun. The third perspective is, we're just having fun, and it's about the story, and it is about, I crushed the person that crushed me, or whatever. Like, I wanted to become a vassal. This is the one that I think strategic people have the hardest time coping with, but you have to accept that it is a way that some people play this game. It is about the story. You play it once a year at, like, your favorite, meet up with all of your friends.
I get that. So I want to be clear.
So hard. Like,
I want to be clear. I feel like I maybe came out too strong against this type of thinking in the other episode, and I want to say, especially with that, what you just said, that like we play once a year. I get it.
Exactly.
And in fact, I think there was a point in time where that was how the game worked for me too.
Yeah.
100 games back.
Yeah.
I think that was where I was at.
And then the final one, of course, being, there's also just the idea of what kind of reputation are you going to hold. And I think this is the problem that I have with kingmaking is I want to point out something that our Fugly Ugly clone, Matt the Fat, that's a Patreon contributor right there. This is something they bring up, and this feeds into my point. Kingmaking leads to an intense emotional investment in the game, even greater than normal, because the emotional connections made in the game actually matter. Suddenly, it's not just about winning or playing the best game you can, but also a secondary concern, who you want to win. This is intensely personal, which is why it's a problem in most board games and a fault of the design, but why it's perfectly suited to the grand opera and drama and intrigue of Twilight Imperium. After personally experiencing a loss due to most of the table tearing victory from my hands and to give it to my enemy because I backstabbed and betrayed and lied my way to the top, I will tell you the reason I do not play with kingmaking is because I am simply not the man to handle it. The pure rage as the table gets divided, the salt one feels at that loss is the kind of thing that can poison friendships in the real world. But if your friendships can handle the strain, what a glorious match of impassioned speeches, nefarious deceptions, enraged assaults, powerful coalitions, and desperate pleas will you behold. If you play with a group that's going to get all butthurt about your mischievous plays, Kingmaking looks really, like, dirty and bad. But when people focus on the story of the game and are okay with putting some of those things by the wayside, if you're playing with a group of good friends that don't actually care the results of the game beyond just, like, superfluous bragging rights, Kingmaking becomes an acceptable thing in that circumstance because it's just about the relationships of the players. TI is a relationship simulator, and it's all part of it.
It is so many things.
It is so many things, and that's the problem of trying. This is why this task we set ourselves of trying to define these things was so ill-advised, because you are trying to define people's relationships with other people. Well, I want to do it no matter what, but we were never going to find a solution.
Of course. But honestly, a lot of the responses that we've gotten from this have been like kind of all over the place. We've had some people that I think really didn't like what we had to say. And I think that, we're reading right now a lot of disagreement that we had. Sure. But I will say this, across the board, I really liked the types of conversations I've seen happening about this.
This has started a lot of discussions about this, and I'm glad it's something that hopefully newer players will look at and consider with their group now beforehand more than they would have previously.
I propose something. You don't have to keep this, but this is just something I'm having this idea right now. When we are done with the strategy guides, to celebrate, we do a role-playing stream.
Absolutely.
A game where we are playing...
We're only in it for the story.
We are role-playing, and we are making as grand a story as possible, and we are perhaps not even looking at it like, who can get the most VPs? What kind of plays can we do? No, I'm reading this stuff and I'm being like, I remember what it was like to play like this, and I want to again.
Yeah, let's finish up some of these erratas. Isaro Rock from subreddit says, you mentioned trading trade agreements and why you're confused that it's done. I propose the situation in which Soul and Extra are across the table and not normally adjacent, but well disposed towards each other. They can swap trade agreements during the agenda phase, and then one of them takes trade and locks everyone else out of trade during the action phase. Blarknob followed up, we swap trade agreements all the time. It lets you trade when you have the opportunity before you have the commodities. This is
Space Cats Peace Turtles 101. Me and Matt underestimated a promissory note, and then somebody's like, here's how you do that, you dinguses. And they are so right.
I would be besmirched if I didn't point out when you guys corrected how we should be using promissory notes. So there it is. Astral Rock and Blarknob are at it again.
They've got it. They did it. They're right. We have no
Just generally speaking, when we talk about a promissory note in a podcast, just ignore what we have to say and tell us what to feel about it.
Don't ignore it, but fix it for us.
Barnilo says, our group from the first game we played immediately house ruled that you couldn't receive your final victory point from another player's support for the throne. I think this is an important thing that a lot of groups should probably like to adopt, which is you should never just be able to hand someone the victory. This is sort of a rule in other games. I know in just like the dumb game Munchkin, you can't win your final point through, I forget what you can't play the cards that just give you a level to win. You have to earn it. And so that's the same thing here. Is you should be able to give support for the thrones freely, but it can never be someone at 9 gets a support for the throne to win. I love that house rule. Blizzard Main says, I think the takeaway I get from this whole conversation is this. And we're really starting to wrap this up here.
Yeah, we're getting close.
When applied to an established group, come up with a way to play the game where it's most fun for you. And when someone wins, no one feels salty or that victory feels unearned. I'll say this much. Salt is fine, because I'm the saltiest person on the planet, and I will scream at people. But the unearned part is important.
Right. I actually really like the attitude of this post. That this makes the most sense. This is a very, just good human way to look at Twilight Imperium. I think me and Matt come with us. Like, if you invite me and Matt over to play,
you are asking
a certain
for
amount of
trouble.
Salt. Like, we carry some salt in little bags for the game. And I think we've talked about this before, but I feel like Twilight Imperium is a way for us to, in a healthy way,
get
that salt out. Because otherwise it comes out in our regular life more, and
that becomes dangerous.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have this podcast if Hunter and I mean, we wouldn't have this podcast if we didn't play Twilight Imperium, because we wouldn't be playing Twilight Imperium, so we wouldn't be able to talk about this subject. But also, we wouldn't be able to stand each other if we didn't get this stuff out of our system.
Yeah, this is the way to exercise that. And because the thing is, no matter how... So, earlier one of these errata posts was talking about how, people can get salty and friendships can get strained. Me and Matt... have gotten so salty in games of Twilight Imperium that other people have been like, what is going on with these two?
Yeah, we made it uncomfortable for the room,
then, like,
which is bad.
And then the sense of relief, though, like, have you ever felt that, like, when we get done with a game and it's over now, and, like, we were really salty towards each other, but there's this kind of, like, it feels good, like, I don't know, like, not to get too philosophical here and when we're trying to just, like, end this episode,
right.
But, like, you know, everyone experiences, like, anger and, like, negative emotions, and I think one of the tricky things about being a human being is finding, like, a healthy place to, like, get those things out there.
You have no idea, dear listener, how much I have struggled with that in the history of my gaming career. I was a controller thrower in the days of Smash Brothers Melee and Halo 2. I was bad. I was a host of many LANs, and people wanted to show up to the LANs because they wanted to play the game, but they did not want to play the game with me because I was not fun to play with, because I would get real mad. And that carries over into Twilight Imperium, but that's sort of like what I've learned over the years, is like figuring out how to keep that at bay.
Let's do our final
Let's
errata.
finish the one, and this is building off this same point, and it's just to say, like, adapt yourself to your play group, right? Nimrafel says, our games are much, much better and fun now. This is after kind of a much longer post describing where they eventually, they had a king-making scenario, and the majority of their table said, if the two of you are ever going to do this again, we can't play this game with you. It's just not going to work. And we've done this before, too. We have a friend named Barrett, who we don't invite to games of Twilight Imperium anymore. We love Barrett, but we're not going to play this board game with him because he ruins it.
He doesn't listen, don't worry.
He doesn't listen, don't worry. The mind games, the strategies, the backstabbing, and ad hoc alliances, the competitive race, everything went to a different level once they established this with these two players. All for the better. Interestingly, it also became a lot more fun socially. Everybody has since been on the same page, and for years we haven't faced scenarios like you described where someone ruins the game by making idiotic decisions or indecisions. The idea being, they as a group of friends established some of the ground rules for what they wanted out of Games of Twilight Imperium, and were able to come to an agreement on what that was, and everyone is better for it, and that's what all of us need to do. If you're going to play this game with strangers, it is a dangerous game to play with strangers, and you should come at it saying, hey, this is the kind of player I am. This is kind of what maybe some of my expectations are. How do you all play, and what can I expect out of this game? Because if you go into it as a die-hard strategy person, and you're playing with a group of like 4 willy-nilly role players, you people are not compatible with each other, and you're not going to have a good time.
Right.
And you just need to be able to establish those kinds of things in a non-judgmental way from the get-go. Some people want to play it highly strategic. Some people want to play it highly thematic, and you just need to figure out where the balance is.
I think we've gotten more strategic in doing the podcast. I want to say that, like, and it's mostly because of the way that we've structured it and the things that we've gone after. But I'm really excited to finish up the strategy part and maybe get back to a more thematic place with it.
Absolutely.
And then we'll get tired of that,
right?
And we'll go back to pure strategy. Not that we're pure strategy.
Let's do the rundown.
All right.
We're getting to a point where we're starting to structure this better. So this is my first attempt at, like, go to our Twitter at SpaceCatsPod if you want game updates and announcements about the show and upcoming videos. Go to Facebook, Space Cats Peace Turtles, for other announcements, as well as you can message us, and a lot of times I'm there and I'll respond to questions. I try to respond to all of them. I don't always hit all of them, but if you ask again, I'll probably see it again. The Twilight Imperium subreddit is where you can go for episode posts and to engage in the ongoing discussion about that episode. It's definitely the best place for discussion.
And then have we talked about that new banner that they have? They
have a beautiful new banner, and I'm a big fan. The Twilight Imperium subreddit is really, like, coming into its own again. There was a big kind of dead period with TI3 because there was, like, 15 of us hanging out there regularly, and now it's really starting to expand, and it's great. Go to our Board Game Geek Guild for some more discussion, as well as the calendar of upcoming episodes. You can email us your submissions for This Imperium Life and Play of the Week. We have a Patreon where you can contribute and you can help make our podcast better by engaging in discussions about upcoming episodes. We have a Discord for fun conversations, as well as those Patreon benefits. The way to converse with us as a patron is to join our Discord and join the separate channels that we have separated off for you. We would love it if you would rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, wherever else it can be rated. But those are the two like way big ones, and ratings matter very much. So it increases visibility about this game that we love, and it increases visibility about this podcast. So we would appreciate a good rating on iTunes.
Also, there is just a podcast recommendation we want to throw at you. There is a Twilight Imperium role-playing game podcast. Well, sorry, it's from I think they're playing Genesis, right?
Well, they're actually not even playing Genesis. They're playing Edge of the Empire because it was right. I think they started it before Genesis came out, maybe. Mm-hmm. Regardless, they're using effectively the same system, but they're playing a game set in the Twilight Imperium universe. And
it's called Twilight Imperium Renegades, and you should check it out.
Yeah, that's some free promotion, but I just started listening to it today. They did a post on the subreddit the other day, and it's given them some more hits, and it's kind of put it back in visibility. But when we first started our podcast, they started at the same time as we did. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for a backlog of Twilight Imperium-related stuff, there's 20-plus episodes of this group of people playing a weekly game of Twilight Imperium-themed role-playing. So get in there and listen to them. I even propose we start a podcast club, sort of like a book club. We can either do that if the TI Renegades people are listening to this, tell us where you want us to go and we'll talk about it, or I'll start a Discord channel on our Discord and you can get in there with us and we can talk about your episodes as we listen to them.
Twilight Imperium Podcast Unite.
Yes, let's do it. And to put more emphasis on that, there's also these guys called Zorpazorp, and they do a video podcast where they run through a game. They've got a time-lapse running of a previous game they played, and they walk you through all their decision-making. It's really the first idea we had with stuff we want to do with Twilight Imperium, and instead we started this podcast, so they're getting the jump on that more interesting idea, right, which is break down one game and just explore everything there is to explore about it. And we love it. It's great.
And I want to say one more thing before we get to the play of the week. This week, I want to thank two Patreoners. Two Patreoners. The first one is Captain Scott, and the second is Mike Raleigh. Thank you both so very, very much. Anytime that anyone gives to our Patreon, you are helping us get closer to the Gen Con video that we'll be doing about Blarknob's tournament, which will be in August, and that is going to be insane.
It's going to be a huge thing for us to try to take on, and we're very excited to do it.
Play of the week time.
I want to read it. You got to read the last two. So this week is by regular contributor Chalklax.
Here, I'll read it.
No!
Just kidding.
It's the agenda phase in round 5. I'm Sol at 5 victory points. Letnev is at 8. There's 4 other players, whatever. My neighbors are the Barony and Necro, and I am under pressure. Barony was kind of an ally, but those pseudo-aristocrats showed no honor at all as they misused my childish trust and took 2 systems from me while I was desperately trying to cope with a suddenly over-aggressive Necro, who had hit me hard during the last 2 rounds since he adapted the game to the Necro playstyle. I'm holding on to my home system, Mechatol, and 2 more systems. All but my home system is shipless, but really heavily stacked with Spec Ops 2. The second agenda shows up. Swords for Plowshares. 4. Each player destroys half of his infantry on each planet he controls rounded up. Then, each player gains trade goods equal to the number of his infantry that were destroyed. Against, each player places 1 infantry from his reinforcements on each planet he controls. Ooh, everybody is eyeing me. Obviously, Sol will not be willing to lose half of his infantry, and so his insurance to stay in the game, since I am hard-pressed with a big Letnev force seemingly aiming at Mechatol. Necro predicts against. 3 others get greedy and play variations of the Rider action card, also all against. Mentak and me are the only ones left to vote. I have 11 influence left. He sold all of his votes to Creus during the first agenda, so I am the one to choose. My choice is 4. No one gets their rider bonuses. My losses number up to 19 infantry. The next one in line is Necro with 7. So, for the 19 destroyed infantry units, I collect 19 trade goods. Then, thanks to Spec Ops 2, I get to roll for each unit destroyed. I managed to regain 13 infantry. So a total of 19 trade goods for 6 infantry lost. So with me picking Imperial and those trade goods, I'm able to achieve the so far unaccomplished Stage 2 public objectives. With me controlling Mechatol, I gain 5 victory points, and I win the game! At least, I could have won the game. The Barony scores unveil flagship during the action phase and grabs a planet from the Nalu that recently became the holy planet of Ix, and boom, ends all of my dreams to notch my second victory in my gaming table's leg. Boo, Barony!
I honestly wish that the player had lied and just said that won them the game, because that is the craziest agenda
amazing
phase.
agenda.
Yeah. Just goes to show you, don't throw all your writers out there so fast. And don't make assumptions on, like, the second they read the thing, I was like, this is good for Soul.
Yeah, exactly.
The
caveat that I kind of edited out is there were like 3 newer players in that game. So they probably didn't think about all the interactions that were going to happen there. But yeah, what a devastating loss for everybody but Soul. We will see you next week with a Winnu strategy guide.
Oh, wow, you're committing
I'm calling
hard.
it. I'm committing. I'm not letting myself think about Winnu anymore. I'm sick of them.
All right, well, good luck. I mean, I'm not going to help.
Thank you for listening to Space Cat's Peace Turtles. And thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica, Bellum Gloriosum. Pizza, 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 pizza phase! It's the pizza phase! Pizza phase! Pizza! Pizza phase! It's the pizza phase. Come on and give us a break during the pizza phase. We're just taking 5 minutes to ourselves while we eat pizza during the pizza phase.